Guys, keep watching until the end because I'm going to show you a very common mistake that beginner mistake that causes this error. Unbound local error cannot access local variable x where it is not associated with a value. Because once you see it, it'll finally make sense. Now, this error, it actually confused me a lot when I was learning Python because at first glance, it looks like the variable should exist. So here's the example. But Python is doing something very specific here. And if you just learned local versus global variables, where I broke down what is local versus global variables in my previous video, this is where things usually break. Now, here's an example again. You might expect this to print 11, but it ends up printing unbound local error. Why? Let me show you again. As you can see, unbound local error. Now, why does this happen? Now, here's the key idea. The moment you assign to a variable inside a function, Python assumes automatically it's a local. So Python reads this line like, use the local variable x before it exists. That's why the error says unbound local error. So basically, like here, we have already defined a value to the variable x in here, but we wanted to use that specific x and add a +1 value to it. But instead, this new, for Python, it's basically like creating a new variable x, a variable called x, and then just putting x +1. But Python doesn't know its value. So that's why it's saying it's giving us an unbound local error. Now here's a quick fix of the scope problem. Now here you have to use the global. Why? Because just like I said, whatever is inside the function, it's local, and if it's outside, it's global. So if we want to specifically add the +1 to the x variable, we're going to use the global x. So global x. All right, guys. So just like I said, we have to use the global variable x. So we're specifically mentioning the x global here. As you can see, it ends up printing 11 instead of printing the boring unbound local error. Because now Python knows we mean the global x. Now here's here's an option 2, which is the most recommended, which is return instead. In Python, I don't recommend you to always use the global keyword because I already covered it in my previous video, so make sure to check it out. So return instead. So we have to return instead. So x is equal to 10, define change. Now here I'll just put define change value. Now let me just remove like the rest of the code. All right. So global x as x is equal to x +1. Now we have to remove it to return value +1. All right. Then we'll write x is equal to change x, and then we'll do print x. Now, once we run this code, it's going to give us the same output 11. Yeah, so it's basically, you have two options. You either use 11, wait a minute, sorry. So let me just run the code again. As you can see, it ends up printing 11. So so you have two options, to either use the global keyword or to use the return, but I recommend you guys to use the return. It's the more cleaner approach. Now here's the very common beginner mistake that I was talking about in the beginning of the video, which is actually a lot of beginners think that Python looks at the code line by line, but instead Python decides variable scope before the function even runs. That's why this error feels random at first, but it's actually very consistent. So let me give you a quick recap. So remember this rule. If you assign to a variable inside a function, Python treats it as local unless you tell it otherwise. That one rule explains a lot of confusing errors. If this video helped, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'm posting beginner Python explanations regularly. So, and yeah, guys, have a nice day. Bye.